that.
Welcome in, everybody. Sunday night edition, the Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. I'll tell you what, is there anything else that needs to be said? It is Selection Sunday. It's about 9 p.m. Eastern time. And, folks, we have a bracket in our hands, a 68-team field. A field, by the way, which includes the University of North Carolina. Nobody saw that coming. A field which does not include West Virginia, among many other teams. So we have ourselves a loaded show. And listen, this is one of the easiest shows that we do all year, okay? So the bottom line is what you need to know. We're going to talk a little bit about North Carolina. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the teams that I believe kind of got screwed with the regions, the matchups, the this, the that. Auburn having to face Louisville in Lexington. Louisville, of course, by the way, having to play as an 8 seed against Auburn. So we'll talk about some of just the big picture bracket stuff. And then today, we will start just talking bracket, okay? So for those of you who are coming for definitive bracket picks, I got Florida over this team. I got Houston beating that team. That's not what we do. I think it's too early in the week. Grant Nelson's injured. Tyrese Hunter's injured. Cooper Flagg is injured. There are so many injuries. What we will do, we'll go region by region, bracket by bracket. I will give you some thoughts on each bracket. And once we do, probably Wednesday night, Tuesday night into Wednesday, maybe we'll probably do our official bracket picks. But today I'm here to talk about brackets. I'm here to answer your questions. So make sure to drop all of your questions in the live chat. But we are loaded here on a Sunday for the Aaron Torres pod. Before we get started, a couple quick announcements. One, as always, make sure that you're subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod. We're going live all week. We'll have bracket reaction. We'll have bracket talk. By the way, the portal doesn't open for another week, but we got guys already entering. We'll have coaching carousel stuff. So make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. And then, oh, by the way, also make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, etc. Also, before we get started, you can see it pinned at the top of the chat in the live chat here on the YouTube channel. But here's the bottom line. Listen, we've done bracket challenges in the past. We're doing something a little bit different this year that I am so fired up for. We are working with Splash Sports. They work with all the heavy hitters here in the media space, Kelly in Vegas, on and on and on. No bracket challenge this year. Instead, what we are doing is, how about this? An NCAA Tournament Survivor pool. So listen, you all have done Survivor pools. You love Survivor pools. They're awesome. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. And as you can see on the bottom of the screen, it's very simple in what you have to do. All you have to do is click the link in the live chat. All you have to do is click the link in the show description if you're listening on podcast, or the link that is pinned at the top of my Twitter page at Aaron_Torres. Survivor pool, you compete against me, you compete against all the other listeners of this show, and the idea is pretty simple. $20 to enter. All you got to do is pick one team each day to win, okay? If that team wins, you advance. That's the good news. The bad news is, of course, you can't pick the same team twice over the course of the NCAA tournament. So I bring it up because it's strategic, it's smart. If you pick Duke to beat whoever in round one, guess what that means? It means you can't pick them again the rest of the tournament. It is such a fun way to consume March Madness. It is such a fun way to consume a bracket. Again, the Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Challenge NCAA Tournament Edition. You're going to want to sign up. By the way, you can enter multiple picks. So if you want to take 2, 3, 4 chances, you can sign up multiple times. $20 to enter. By the way, minimum of $500 to the winner. I think the more people we get signed up, I think we're talking about a $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, $10,000 prize pool. So make sure you sign up. Click the link in the show description. And I am so fired up. I'm already starting to think about what I'm doing on Thursday and Friday for the NCAA tournament, but I am so fired up. By the way, before we get started, I do also want to welcome another friend, another partner. I want to welcome, how about this? I am so fired up for this partnership. I want to welcome SeatGeek. It's March. You all are going to games. UConn fans are going to be in Raleigh. Kentucky fans are going to be in Milwaukee. Arkansas, St. John's, Kansas fans, everybody is going to Providence. Providence is the place to be this weekend. And we have a special gift from our friends at SeatGeek. First of all, you know about SeatGeek. 28 million downloads. SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app anywhere on the internet, with tickets to over 70,000 events, including concerts, festivals, and yes, sporting events. March Madness is here. Games are all over the country. You're either going to watch your team, you're going to the local games to watch some other teams, and whether you're seeing your favorite team or not, SeatGeek is the app that you got to download. The best part is they rate each ticket on a scale of 1 to 10 to let you know if you're getting a good deal. If you see green dots, it means it is a great ticket. If you see red dots, it means it's a train wreck, okay? So I bring it up because every ticket is backed by a buyer guarantee, but here is the best part, as my dog just stormed into the room excited to talk brackets with me. The best part, SeatGeek is offering a special deal for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Use code Torres at checkout. Okay, so this is the important part. Torres at checkout. If you're a BYU fan going to games in Denver, if you're an Arkansas fan going to a game in Providence, UConn and Raleigh, use code Torres at checkout. You get $20 off your first ticket purchase. Again, use code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. Even better, if you click the link in the show description to download the app, the code automatically goes to your account so you can use it later. Thank you to SeatGeek, a partner of the Aaron Torres pod. All right, with that said, March Madness is here. The chat is humming. We appreciate everybody's support of the Aaron Torres pod. There is no more time to waste. So let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, by the way, producer Matt pulled some questions. We'll get to them in a minute. But listen, bracket comes out 6 p.m. Eastern. Here's the bottom line, right? Is you look at this bracket, we could start in a million different places. And it's funny, if you had asked me where I was going to start 6 hours ago, 12 hours ago, probably like 10 minutes before the bracket actually came out, you know what I don't think I would be talking about? I don't think that I would have been talking about team number 68 in the NCAA tournament field. And if you're just joining us, we're going to go bracket by bracket in a minute. But the biggest story out of Selection Sunday is simple. It's straightforward. It is the fact that the North Carolina Tar Heels, who had a grand total of basically 0 brackets that anyone saw anywhere with North Carolina in the field, they make it as team number 68. They will play Wednesday night in Dayton. I don't even remember who they're playing, to be perfectly honest. Doesn't really matter. But I bring it up because North Carolina is in. This was the shocker of all shockers. And of course, it comes with Bubba Cunningham, the North Carolina AD, as the head of the selection committee. A lot of people got a lot of thoughts on this. So before we break down brackets, I just got to spend 4, 5, 6 minutes on North Carolina being team number 68 in the field. By the way, West Virginia, which everybody had in their bracket, was team number 69. So man, oh man, oh man, what a crazy story. My first thought when I see team North Carolina in, listen, I want to be fair and I want to be transparent because I have gone a lot. North Carolina, I got a lot of takes on, okay? And if you listen to this show probably about 2.5 weeks ago, I did say that, listen, I thought that North Carolina, if the way the cut line worked, that North Carolina was on the fringes, I thought that they should probably be given the benefit of the doubt. This was 2.5 weeks ago. And my argument was pretty simple. They scheduled as aggressively as anybody in college basketball. They go to Maui. They play the eventual SEC tournament champs or SEC regular season champs, Auburn Tigers, who are, of course, the #1 overall seed. They face Michigan State and lose the eventual Big Ten champs. They played Florida in the out-of-conference. They played Alabama in the out-of-conference. And they played Duke 3 times. And so of their 13 losses, 7 of them, an insane stat, were to teams that were eventually in position to get #1 seeds. And oh, by the way, 5 of those losses came to teams that were #1 seeds. And so I said about 2.5 weeks ago, I said, look, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think you should punish teams for scheduling aggressively. They didn't have to go to Maui. They could have stayed home and played Eastern Illinois and Western this and South Dakota School of Technology and, a tractor trailer school from down the street, and they could have picked up 3, 4, 5 more wins. But what I will also say is that as the last couple weeks went on, it became harder and harder to defend Carolina. First of all, one quad one win all season, okay. But they have Duke at home on senior day. And yeah, we talked about that game. It was close. It was competitive. It was this. It was that. It was whatever. Duke still blew him out of the building. And then to me, I think about the way that last week or the way the ACC tournament ended. We have not done a live show since Wednesday night, but we all know what happened Friday night at the ACC tournament. We all know that it was Duke versus Carolina. Duke was up by as much as 24 points in that game. Carolina rallies before a Jalen Withers lane violation on a game-tying free throw cost Carolina. And so I'll be honest, I'm the guy that defended Carolina for 2, 3, 4 weeks on this show as they started to play better. But I thought as we got closer to Selection Sunday, it was just harder to justify. I thought, listen, if you get that win against Duke, even without Cooper Flagg, okay, there's at least an argument. Yes, it's only 2 quad one wins, but you beat Duke. You have the win over UCLA. You played a million tough out of conference games. But a couple things happened. One, other teams on the bubble kept winning. Arkansas went from bubble to in the tournament. Georgia, 4 straight wins to end the regular season. Oklahoma, to its credit, played its way off the bubble into the tournament. So some of those teams, yes, during Champ Week did not play well. But the counter to that was during the final few weeks of the season, there were teams that were improving their resumes. Again, Oklahoma, you go on and on down the list. Most of the teams on the 8 or 9 or 10 seed lines were all those teams. And so for me, it became increasingly hard to defend North Carolina. And then I thought by the time we got to Selection Sunday, I didn't see the argument for North Carolina. Because again, you look at all those teams that played their way in. The fact that, oh, by the way, Colorado State wins the Mountain West. And then the bracket comes out. And I'll say this, it happened early in the bracket show, so at least you had time to digest it. By the way, should mention, I just hosted 3 hours of Fox Sports Radio, so I'm just reacting in real time like everybody else. But North Carolina gets in as team number 68. We see the committee has West Virginia at team number 69. And as we start to look at North Carolina being in this field, I got to be real. I think it's hard to justify. I think it's hard to explain. And listen, I haven't shared many of my Luka Doncic conspiracy theories on this show, but the Luka Doncic trade was sketchy. And North Carolina getting in as the last at-large team, that's on the Luka scale. Like if Luka's a 10, this is like an 8.5, okay? So first of all, with the bracketology stuff, let me say this. I want to defend all my bracketology people, okay? Because at the end of the day, I think it's easy to sit there and say, oh, whatever. What do these guys really know? Well, listen, I don't know if there is a field where these dudes grind harder to put out quality content than the bracketology people, okay? We've had Rocco Miller from Field of 68 on Fox Sports Radio the last 2 nights. Listen, I know college basketball. This dude knows bracketology in a manner that I can't even explain. Okay, Q1 this, Q2 that, wins above bubble. And so, to me, bracketology is almost the opposite of most media. I think when I look at most media, what I see is a bunch of groupthink, right? You think about the NFL draft, perfect example. Somebody says, oh, I don't know if Shedeur Sanders is a first-round pick. Then somebody else says it, then somebody else says it. And you wonder, do people actually think that, or is it groupthink? Well, I bring it up because I don't think there's groupthink in NCAA tournament bracketology. I think all these guys bust their butts to be differentiators, to look different, to sound different, to say something different. And none of them had North Carolina in the field. And the thing was, it made it easy. Put North Carolina in. They're the big brand. It makes it look easy. So when no bracketologist, because remember, what is bracketology ultimately, right? Bracketology is ultimately, it is not someone's opinion on what the bracket should be. It's someone's, what bracketology is, it's not someone's opinion on what the bracket should be. What the bracketology actually is all these guys and girls projecting what the committee will do based on previous year's results. So the fact that all of these bracketologists looked at all of these brackets and all of these selection committees from years past, and none of them could justify putting Carolina in, I'm right there alongside them. The other thing is, as I said a minute ago, Bubba Cunningham, lead of the NCAA Tournament Committee, head of the committee, chair of the committee, is the North Carolina AD. Now, listen, I thought it was very clever that they brought on the associate chairman of the committee to do all the interviews because, of course, like to the credit of the committee and to the credit of CBS, I'll give Seth Davis credit on this one. Seth Davis asked the question everybody wanted to know. Bubba, you're the North Carolina AD. Everybody seems to think that your team did not belong in. How do you explain it? And Bubba Cunningham gave the whole thing about I recused myself and I wasn't in the room when they talked Carolina. And so they brought in the secondary person, the second guy in charge of the committee to explain Carolina. I love the explanation, by the way. The explanation was, well, listen, we had UAB. If UAB had won the AAC, then guess what? That means that they would have been 68 and Carolina would have been 69 and they were out. Oh, you mean so if a bid stealer had actually stolen a bid, the team that was in 68th place would have been out of the tournament? Yeah, we all know that. And so I think the bigger question, and I don't blame CBS, you're reacting in real time, but the big question is, what did you see on Carolina's resume that wasn't on West Virginia's resume? Now, you could, if you really want to try, you can probably figure out some things. Listen, Carolina, I guess to their credit, you're talking about a team that, yes, they only had one quad one win. They only, by the way, in their defense, if you want to go so far as to defend North Carolina, this is a team that of their 13 losses, 12 of them were in quad one. So again, 13 losses, 1-12 in quad one. I guess to their credit, 21-1 in non-quad one games, really only one bad loss, Stanford at home. And I guess if you're really trying to make the argument for them, West Virginia, who was the first team out, that was a team that had a couple quad two losses compared to North Carolina, which had 0 quad two losses and 1 quad three loss. But man, oh man, it's just tough. I mean, because you look at West Virginia, one, they took care of business in the out of conference. That's the funny part. They beat Gonzaga in the out of conference. They beat Arizona. I know Arizona is a Big 12 team, but technically Arizona is a team in the out of conference. It counted as an out of conference game because they played them in the Battle for Atlantis. They had a couple nice wins. Now, the thing with West Virginia, they did have a couple really bad losses. They lost to UCF or Colorado, I guess it was, in the conference tournament. They lost, they lost at Kansas State. They got swept at Cincinnati. So I just think that it's an interesting dynamic with North Carolina of one great win, no really bad losses. West Virginia had a couple really bad losses as well. But listen, I'm not going to sit here and defend North Carolina. There's a lot to get to, but that was the big story. I'm still in shock that Carolina was in while we're here, so I'm not just picking on Carolina. I'm stunned that Xavier was in. I guess to a degree, I'm stunned that Texas was in as well. But I guess to me, what that tells me is the bubble was really weak. And it was funny. This was one thing that we did talk about on our selection show on Fox Sports Radio. If you're somebody that either wants expansion or has said like, hey, expansion really wouldn't be that bad at the NCAA tournament, tonight was a bad night for expansionists, okay? Because UNC, 1 quad 1 win. Xavier, 1 quad 1 win. I believe San Diego State was 2-5 in Q1, but at least they have a win over Houston to kind of hang their hats on. But what a weird day. By the way, the other team that got really screwed, Indiana, 4 quad 1 wins, 0 losses in quads 2, 3, and 4. Man, oh man, oh man. What a weird deal for North Carolina. Really quickly, just want to go through a couple reactions to the bracket before we'll go region by region here in a minute. Just want to share a couple quick reactions. By the way, couple quick reminders. One, you can see it pinned in the show description. Compete against me, Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Challenge, Survivor Pool. You've seen it. You've done it. You know all about it. It's pinned at the top of the live chat. It is pinned on my Twitter page. Bottom line is this. Survivor pools, we've all played them. You know how it works. You pick one team. If that team wins, you advance to the next round. The only rule is, of course, you can't pick the same team twice, right? So if you pick Duke to win on Thursday or Friday or whatever, well, guess what? That means you can't pick them again the rest of the NCAA tournament. So it's strategic. It's smart. Here's the cool part. $20 to enter. You get to compete right against me. But I think more than that, you can have more than one entry. So if you want to take chances, you want to take 2, 3, 4 different teams, you can sign up to 10 different times for this Survivor pool. I think the best part, by the way, you're signing up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times for a prize pool that will rank in the thousands when it's all said and done, okay? Minimum of $500 in this prize pool. But here's the crazy part. You sign up, you get a couple buddies to sign up. Guess what happens? That prize pool goes up really quick. We're working with Splash Sports. All of the money in the pool goes to the winner. So, I mean, you could be looking at $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 for first prize. Sign up today. Invite your friends today. We are going to have so much fun. All right, really quickly, before we do get to the brackets themselves, I just want to take half a moment and just talk about some other quick reactions that I had as the bracket was unveiled on Saturday or on Sunday evening, okay? And I'll be transparent. I think my takeaways, they started with quite literally the first pod and the second team overall, okay? So first of all, Auburn, number 1 overall seed. Awesome. I think they should have been the number 1 overall seed. I thought if Duke got it, it would have been a little bit of revisionist history. They're playing well now. Auburn struggling. Auburn has 16 quad 1 wins. Nobody else is close. I believe they should have been the number 1 overall seed, even though they've lost 3 of 4. Then I saw who they could play in round 2. How about the fact that Auburn could be playing Louisville in Lexington in round 2, okay? And so I tweeted this out. I truly believe it. I stand by it. I think this is an all-time screw job by the committee. You look at Auburn. You look at the schedule that they put together this year. Guess what then happens from there? You then have to go to Lexington. By the way, you were just in Rupp Arena. Never forget, we know how that game ended in Kentucky a few weeks ago. You clinch an SEC regular season title, and you win in a place you haven't won since 1988. Then you know what happened? They did the BTA, the belt to ass celebration, and they've been struggling ever since. So one, that crowd is already going to be against them. But two, to have to face a Louisville team potentially in round 2, I think that's an all-time screw job. By the way, you know how I know that it was actually a pretty big screw job? I tweeted it out. Dan Wolken from USA Today said, oh, Torres doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not a screw job. Yeah, it is. You would potentially be playing an 8 seed 45 minutes from their campus. I've driven from Louisville to Lexington. It's like, what, 40 Kentucky fans, Louisville fans, get in the chat. Tell me. I think it's, 45 or so minutes? So I think that's a tough draw for Auburn. We'll get into the South region in a minute. But that was my first overall reaction to the NCAA tournament selection, was like, how did Auburn end up having to face Louisville in round 2, potentially? Speaking of which, you know who I think was the second biggest loser in the bracket on Sunday? Louisville. Louisville is a team. Listen, I know the ACC is down, but let's go ahead and give Pat Kelsey a little bit of credit here, okay? Louisville started the season 6-5. A lot of injuries, this, that, the other thing. They lose, ironically, at Rupp Arena to fall to 6-5 in mid-December when they face Louisville. When they face Kentucky, okay? Well, I bring it up because after they lost to Kentucky, they proceeded to, are you ready for this? They proceeded to win 21 of their next 23 games. Louisville is 21-2 since the middle of February, since before Christmas. They were projected on every bracket as a 6 seed. I think some places even as high as a 5. So to get an 8 seed is highway robbery. Listen, I'm not going to spend too much time. We got so much bracket stuff to get to, but an 8 seed for Louisville, I think, is an all-time screw job for them too. The good news is you are 45 minutes from campus. You got to take care of Creighton. We're going to get to that matchup here in a minute, but man, oh man, is that a tough draw. A couple other things that stand out. Listen, I won't be lying. I won't lie to you. Providence, it's the spot to be, okay? That's where DJ Pauly D first made his bones. Providence is on fire. It hasn't been this hot since DJ Pauly D was spitting in the clubs, okay? By the way, I know for half the audience, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Jersey Shore, learned a thing or two, okay? Providence, insane. First of all, I'll tell you this. You know, we talked about Arkansas all last week. Like, they're in. It's not a big deal. And then all of a sudden, the brackets start coming out. They're not in Milwaukee, which some projected. They're not in Denver. They're not here. They're not there. They're not in the 11 seeds. So it's like, where are they going to end up? They end up, how about this? As a 10 seed in Providence, they're going to face Kansas in the opening day of the NCAA tournament. I already saw tip times are out. Kansas and Arkansas, Bill Self versus John Calipari is the 7 o'clock Eastern time start time on CBS. So you know When Duke is playing on Friday and they chose somebody else in that 7 p.m. Eastern window, that means they're expecting a barn burner of a game. Now, this, of course, is a rematch, by the way, of the charity exhibition that Arkansas won at Bud Walton. Both teams are completely different. Arkansas has been up and down for sure. Kansas certainly has been up and down for sure. But that stood out. How about this, by the way? Winner gets Rick Pitino and St. John's. Listen, Rick Pitino, St. John's, it's been a dream season. But at the same time, how about Pitino in round 2 having to face another Hall of Famer? And I think, to be abundantly clear, I think that St. John's is a better team than Arkansas. I think they're a better team than Kansas. But Bill Self is a monster, whatever you think of him. They got a really talented roster that many people, including me, thought was a top 2 or 3 team in the country coming into the season. And so I just bring it up because you could face Bill Self or you could face John Calipari. I'm not positive on this. I think I saw that Calipari is 8-2 all time against Pitino as a college basketball coach, coached against each other a lot more in the NBA. But Calipari, I believe, is 8-2 against Pitino, beating him twice in the NCAA tournament, famously lost to Pitino in the 96 Final Four, but also beat him in, what was it, the 2012 Final Four, Kentucky and Louisville. And I think it was the 2014 Sweet 16. I could be mistaken on that. I'm not John Rothstein. I can't name all these off the top of my head. But I just bring it up because St. John's, that dream season, they will have a huge advantage in Providence. But that is a tough draw. We're going to break down all the brackets in a minute. Just a couple more teams that, to me, kind of got a little bit of a raw end of the deal. Should mention, by the way, for any Arkansas fan, for any St. John's fan, for any Kansas fan that is going to be in Providence, use our friend SeatGeek, okay? So I just told you a minute ago, but a quick reminder, we're working with SeatGeek all March long. They got a special offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Find your tickets, purchase your tickets. Remember, green dot, that is a seat you want, but use promo code Torres at checkout. Your first purchase, you will get $20 off. So if those tickets are going for $100, you're getting them for $80. Tickets are going for $200, you're getting them for $180. Tickets going for $20, you get them for free. If they're going for $21, you get them for $1. Use promo code Torres at checkout for your tickets if you're going anywhere in March. Really quick, a couple other teams that I think got screwed by the committee. And we're going to break down the actual brackets in a minute. UCLA, you ready for a dust-up? Mick Cronin's going to freak out. So Mick Cronin's been complaining all year about the travel for UCLA in the Big Ten. I think the quote was, we've seen the Statue of Liberty more than we've seen our own campus. They had like 2 or 3 straight East Coast road trips. Granted, one of them was out of conference, but another story for another day. If you remember, before the Big Ten tournament, Mick Cronin basically said, I was torn on if I should pack for 2 straight weeks. And his argument was, if we win the Big Ten tournament, we're playing on Sunday, it might not make sense for us to fly back to LA. So I bring it up because why is that? It is because UCLA will open on Thursday. They will open on Thursday in Lexington, Kentucky. I believe it's the Lexington Regional. It's the East Coast, wherever it is. They will play Utah State. So this is a team that had 1 million cross-country trips. They go to Indianapolis, lose in the opener, fly back to LA. Now they have to fly back, play Thursday. For people who don't know the travel, that means they're leaving on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, Wednesday media availability. Mick Cronin cannot be happy with that travel schedule. And then just a couple other teams that kind of stand out. You know, I thought Michigan got a little bit screwed because, one, they got a 5 seed. I think a lot of people thought they'd be a little bit higher than a 5 seed. They are playing on Thursday, just like UCLA is. They're playing in Denver. So remember, they were in Indianapolis. They probably are in air right now. They will land and then have to fly back out on Tuesday. They will face UC San Diego, 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursday night. Remember, that's also at altitude. The other one that stands out, VCU, who is playing BYU in round 1, they will also be in Denver. They have about a 4:15 Eastern tip-off in that game. I just bring it up because VCU wins on Saturday. They now have to, or Sunday, excuse me. They have to fly out to Denver. That will be a quick turnaround. All right, so what we're going to do, what we're waiting for. And by the way, I want to get to a couple questions, a couple comments. We got to shout out our partners at BetUS on the other side as well. But I just bring it up because, just bring it up to very simply say, let's talk brackets. I want to get to some of your questions. We're going to go through every single bracket. I'm going to share my first thoughts. We're not making national title picks, nothing like that. but we're going to share some thoughts. We're going to talk brackets. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. More Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rensselaer Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions @gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So YouTube chat is humming. We'll get to some of your questions and comments in a minute. We will also get to some brackets in just one moment. Amazing group here at about, 9:42 Eastern time. Let's talk brackets. Before we do, though, do want to welcome our friends. I want to welcome our partners. I want to welcome BetUS TV. Okay, so last year we went to Phoenix, courtesy of BetUS TV. They are an incredible partner, and here's the bottom line. It is March. You need more content than just the Aaron Torres pod. What you need to do is go to betustv.com. Wall-to-wall coverage of not only college basketball, but also Major League Baseball with spring training getting underway. NBA, that season is underway. NHL, overseas soccer, you name it, BetUS TV has you covered. But again, they are also working with Torres, and the best part is they are taking us to San Antonio. We will be on the ground with BetUS TV, live coverage, awesome behind-the-scenes content. So check it all out, BetUS TV. We appreciate BetUS TV support, and I cannot wait. Listen, I don't want to rush anything because we're getting to San Antonio here in a couple weeks, but they are with us all March long. They are with us through the Final Four. We're going to San Antonio on behalf of BetUS TV. So thank you for their partnership. All right, this is what I want to do. I want to spend some time looking at some brackets, okay? And so the bottom line is, let me just be real here, okay? I was on live radio during the bracket reveal. I am still trying to piece together everything that happened in brackets. And so I only bring it up because I don't have all the answers. If you're coming here saying, Torres, who's your Final Four pick? Who's your national championship pick? Which 12 seed is pulling off the upset? I don't got all the answers this second. I think, first of all, it's a little too early, right? What is the status of Cooper Flagg? Do we think he's playing on Friday? Do we think he's playing on Sunday? Because I think Mississippi State can beat Duke if Cooper Flagg is not available. What about Grant Nelson? Saw an update that he could be back as soon as round one. Tyrese Hunter, Memphis, was in a walking boot. So there's a lot to peel back. What I want to do is just give you first thoughts, first reactions to all of these brackets. I think probably Tuesday night, I will make my official bracket picks. So make sure that you're locked in. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, shame on you. Over 50,000 subscribers we have hit. But we need your support to get it. I think we can get to 60K before the end of the year. But again, we're just basically going to be live this entire week. Also worth mentioning, and I've said this before, we'll talk portal, we'll talk coaching carousel. So this is just not, one of those deals where we only talk brackets, college hoops. It's a crazy time of year. And so let's go ahead and get into all of the brackets. Producer Matt, which bracket are we looking at first? All right. So we are looking, let's start with the South. Okay. So South Regional, Listen, we just talked about it a minute ago, but let's go ahead and dive into some of these games, some of these matchups, some of the things that stand out to me when I look at the South Regional. Okay. First thing that stands out, Auburn, number 1 overall seed, said it a minute ago. I believe that's the right decision by the committee. Okay. Bottom line for me with Auburn is that, listen, I know it has not gone well the last couple weeks. I understand that this is a team that is 1-3 in its last 4 games. Listen, I'll say this and defend Auburn a little bit, is that when I look at Auburn, I think it's kind of worth noting, of those 4 losses, you lose to Florida, or you lose to Tennessee, which I think is a terrible matchup for you. Never forget, Tennessee almost beat Auburn at Auburn. You lose to Alabama at the buzzer. You lose to Texas A&M a day after, or a game after you won the league championship. I'm still not freaking out about it. What I am sort of freaking out about, though, is that 8-9 game, because I just said it a second ago, having to potentially face Louisville in Rupp Arena. By the way, you talk about Kentucky fans that maybe bought tickets for that Rupp Regional being a little bit conflicted. Are we rooting for Louisville, our hated rival, or are we rooting for Auburn, who celebrated an SEC title by mocking us on our home court a few weeks ago? By the way, Kentucky fans, drop your thoughts in the chat because I'm actually pretty curious. Louisville, Creighton in the 8-9 game. Listen, Creighton's a great story. I think Louisville's a significantly better team. We're not going to go pick by pick, but that is one that I just, I'll look at it all week and I won't ever doubt Louisville. The thing about Louisville, like I said, 21-2 in their last 23. They've basically had one bad game since Christmas. That was against Georgia Tech on the road. Creighton, I think they overachieved a little bit. Stephen Ashworth is good, but he's limited. The one thing I will say, Louisville does not have a ton of size. Ryan Kalkbrenner could cook. So that is the 8-9 game in that region. Looking at the 5-12, interesting from the Michigan UC San Diego perspective, okay? Just mentioned this a minute ago, but Michigan, kind of getting a little bit screwed here. It's funny, right? Because we talk about how much impact do the Sunday conference championship games have. Well, I bring it up because some of these bracketologies had Michigan as high as a 3 seed. They get a 5 seed, and as I just said, they won on Sunday afternoon. They're probably on a charter back to campus now. They probably get back at 10 or 11 at night on Sunday night. And now they immediately have to fly out and play on Thursday at altitude. I don't think it's going to be easy. Now, the one thing I will say, I think this could be a trendy 5-12 matchup. UC San Diego is an insane 30-4 this year. I give UC San Diego a ton of credit. The one thing about them, they are just not a very big team as far as, how they play. Biggest guy on their roster is really about 6'8", 6'9". I think that could be a tough matchup. Michigan, of course, famously plays those 2 7-footers. So I think Michigan probably should feel pretty good there, even though I know that's going to be a trendy 8-9 or a trendy 5-12 matchup. How about this? This is an interesting one. The 4-13 matchup. Why is it interesting? Texas A&M versus Yale. It's interesting for 2 reasons. Texas A&M, very limited in what they do. They don't shoot a lot of threes. They rely on a lot of offensive rebounds. But also, don't forget, Yale, of course, took care of business just last year in the opening round. Cover your ears, producer Matt. They beat the Auburn Tigers just 1 year ago in the NCAA tournament in an opener. So I bring it up because Yale ain't scared. Texas A&M is vulnerable. The thing about Texas A&M, they're going to have their highs, they're going to have their lows, but they're not a team. And it's so funny. Like I go on TexAgs every week, talk to David Nuno about this for months, is the fact that with the way they play, Texas A&M is never just going to have a 22-point lead and can cruise to victory. Every game's in the 60s. Every game's up in the air. Yale has that tournament experience. I got to dig into that one a little bit deeper, but I think that one's interesting and worth watching. Next, let's stay in that region. Ole Miss obviously is the 6th seed there. They are in the region where they will play the winner of North Carolina in their opening matchup of the NCAA tournament. So you talk about this is where North Carolina will be in the NCAA tournament as the last team in. They face San Diego State, and we'll see what happens because they will face Ole Miss on Friday in their regional. I believe that's where Ole Miss plays, right? Yeah. It would be. Yeah, it would be. Okay. So sorry, the bracket's a little bit screwy here, but I bring it up because you look at UNC versus San Diego State. One thing I will say, by the way, and I'm not saying I'm picking the upset here, But UNC, everybody's crapping on UNC. They had won 7 straight games until they lost to Duke in the regular season finale. And so I just bring it up because I think there's this notion that UNC is terrible. No, UNC lost to really good teams throughout the year. And so I just think, I do think there's the possibility that Carolina can go in, take care of business against San Diego State, and then face off with Ole Miss. So that's one I got to chew on a little bit more. Ole Miss is playing so well, beat Arkansas in that thriller in the SEC tournament. Obviously, following that game against Arkansas, played Auburn really tough. But Ole Miss is in as the 6th seed. They will face the winner of Carolina and San Diego State. Bottom half of that bracket, Iowa State over Lipscomb. Lipscomb played some tough competition in the out-of-conference. They played Arkansas at Bud Walton Arena. They played Kentucky at Rupp Arena. They challenged themselves in the out-of-conference. They go on to win the ASUN 25-9 overall. I'll tell you, I think Iowa State's a tough matchup. But the thing that's worth noting with Iowa State, they're not 100% right now. We talked about why we don't make final picks on Sunday night. Well, how about this? It's because Iowa State was without 2 of their top players in the Big 12 tournament when they lost to BYU. No Keyshawn Gilbert, no Tamin Lipsey. Both guys averaged double figures. That could be a factor. We will monitor that. I don't know that Lipscomb will have enough, but Iowa State is the 3 seed in that bracket. And then, oh, by the way, after that, this is a very interesting matchup beyond Iowa State facing Lipscomb, okay? I think Marquette, New Mexico. This is a Friday. If I'm reading my math correct, I think it's a 7:25 Eastern time start. New Mexico versus Marquette. Okay, New Mexico versus Marquette is going to be awesome. Cam Jones is one of the top guards in America. New Mexico has a kid named Donovan Dent. Donovan Dent, I'm telling you, could play in any conference for anyone in America. He has to be probably one of the most underrated players in all of college basketball. Smaller guard, but averaged 21 points and nearly 7 assists per game. New Mexico, of course, coached by Richard Pitino. I think New Mexico can pull off the upset, if you even want to call it that there. Michigan State plays Bryant in the final game of that bracket. Really quick, looking at some of the other stuff. Listen, again, we'll go game by game, and I'll make my final picks next week. I will say this. I think if Auburn gets by Louisville, I actually do like their path, okay? Because you're facing either a Michigan team or a Texas A&M team. I'll be real. I think Texas A&M could give Michigan fits because Michigan is tall, but A&M is physical and is going to beat the crap out of you, okay? And so if Texas A&M wins that opener against Yale, I actually think they match up pretty well with Michigan because Michigan is tall, but I don't know how tough they are down low. That's not a knock. It's just a reality. 2 7-footers that want to put the ball on the floor, want to do different things. I could see Texas A&M winning that game. And then if Auburn gets A&M, I just like that matchup for Auburn. I know they lost a few weeks ago, but that was at A&M. A&M was on a 4-game losing streak. A&M was desperate. So I would like Auburn in that matchup, potentially go to the Elite Eight. I'll tell you this, Iowa State against either Ole Miss or Carolina. I kind of like how those teams match up with Iowa State. Ole Miss is tough. They're physical. They're veteran. Jamin Brakefield, Matt Morrell, Juju Murray is the point guard at Ole Miss. Juju Watkins is the point guard at USC for the women's team. We'll break down the women's bracket sometime later in the week. Kidding. We're not going to do that at all. But I bring it up because I think either Ole Miss or UNC could potentially pull off an upset, again, if you want to call it that, against Iowa State. I do like New Mexico against Marquette. And I'll be real. I think either of those teams could beat Michigan State. Now, why that is noteworthy, why it could be potentially historic, New Mexico, great basketball tradition, okay? Some great teams. I remember Steve Alford was there. They got a 3 seed one year. They've been a really good program. New Mexico's never made a Sweet 16 in program history. So I think it would be a little tough against Michigan State. But Michigan State, I actually like that draw for Michigan State. Neither New Mexico nor Marquette has a ton of size. New Mexico, by the way, was a trendy pick last year. They played Clemson, and New Mexico could not get the win. So we'll see if they can do it there. And I'll just say this about the East region or the South region. We'll wrap really quick. I really do think if Auburn can get by, Louisville, I think they're in pretty good shape. Bottom half of the bracket, I think that Ole Miss North Carolina winner can give Iowa State fits. I think New Mexico could give Michigan State fits. I think this is a bracket I think we could see a little bit of chaos. I think we could see a 6 seed, maybe, I don't want to say an 11 seed. I don't know if Carolina can make a run, but I think we're going to see somebody funky probably playing Auburn to go to the Final Four. Let's keep breaking down brackets. And by the way, we're going to get to some of your questions here in a minute. By the way, I think Monday we'll do a little bit of a bracket show, but also some portal stuff. But let's get to the next bracket. And boy, oh boy, is it a doozy. Producer Matt, what bracket do we have? Oh my goodness, this is the one. Hide the kids, hide the children, because we are talking about the West Regional, which of course has the single most interesting draw at the bottom half of the bracket. That is right, St. John's, facing the winner of St. John's facing the winner of Arkansas, Kansas. We'll get to that in a minute. Before we do, though, let's start at the top of the bracket. Florida, the number 1 seed out west. That's ultimately not that big of a surprise to me. Florida, listen, I actually think, I'll be real. I think if there was anyone that had an argument for being the number 1 overall seed outside of Auburn, I actually thought it was Florida. More quad 1 wins than Duke. I know Duke had that great win against Auburn earlier in the season, but guess what? Florida beat Auburn at Auburn. And so I'm not surprised. Listen, we've talked about it for years. I do think, and I hate to say it, what you do on Sunday of conference tournaments, I don't think matters as much as it should. And so I just bring it up because I'm not surprised that Florida is the number 1 overall seed. By the way, I had my buddy Dan Byer, who hosts Fox Sports Radio with me. He brought up the good point. Whoever makes this West Regional final in San Francisco could be a lot of empty seats. Only 2 teams in the Mountain Time Zone, 0 in the Pacific Time Zone are even in this region, so a lot of good tickets available. Florida faces Norfolk State. The 8-9 game, you talk about an interesting one. UConn versus Oklahoma. This is fascinating, okay? So UConn was projected to be an 8 seed in Raleigh, but everybody assumed it was going to be against Duke, Duke being the 1 seed. Instead, they face Florida. That's if they get by Oklahoma. I'll be real. I think this is actually a kind of a nice matchup for Oklahoma. They're very athletic. They're pretty physical. They're certainly battle tested. The big matchup here will be Hassan Diarra, who I believe is an underrated athletic point guard. He'll have to guard Jeremiah Fears. You're talking about a 6th-year senior in college basketball against a true freshman that reclassified. I don't have it in front of me, but I would think that Hassan Diarra has to be one of the older players in college basketball going up against one of the youngest players in college basketball in Jeremiah Fears. So that will be the interesting matchup there. Going to the 5-12 game, I'll say this. 2 things stand out. One, Memphis. Listen, let me say this. I think the committee screwed up a lot of these seedings. I want to go ahead and give the committee credit, though, for Memphis, okay? Because with Memphis, I think it would be very easy to sit there and say that they play in this terrible conference. Most of the bracketologies had them as an 8 or so seed. I am happy that Memphis was rewarded for playing just an insane out-of-conference schedule. For those of you who don't remember, this is who Memphis beat in the out-of-conference. They beat Missouri. We know Missouri's pretty good NCAA tournament team. They beat UConn in Maui. They beat Michigan State, the Big Ten regular season champs. In the out-of-conference, they won at Clemson. Remember, Duke lost at Clemson. Kentucky lost at Clemson. Memphis won there. Memphis also beats Virginia. They beat Ole Miss at home. And so I thought just because the league was so bad, they were going to be punished. But let's give the committee credit for not punishing them, putting them as a 5 seed. What's going to be interesting, we've talked about it. Their starting point guard, Tyrese Hunter, was in a boot, hurt his foot in the semifinal win on Saturday. They played UAB in the title game and won without him. We will see. It's going to be tough for them to make a real run without Tyrese Hunter. So we'll see if we get any updates. Colorado State, of course, is the Mountain West tournament champ. I'll tell you this. Colorado State's playing about as well as anybody in college basketball right now. The advanced analytics say they're like a top 15 or so team over the last month of the regular season, but they won, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games going into the conference tournament, 7 straight going into the conference tournament. They beat Nevada. They destroyed Utah State. Now, they won by 9, but I watched that game. They were up by 20 most of the second half, and then they win by double figures against Boise in the title game. And so Colorado State's playing about as well as anybody. I think that is a fascinating matchup in that region, and I think it'll be a great matchup if you're a fan of college basketball. That is a 2 p.m. Eastern start, and that is on Friday. Really quickly, the 4-13 matchup, Maryland. I think Maryland is a wildly underrated team throughout the season. Lost at basically the buzzer in the conference championship game. They're facing Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon ain't afraid of nobody. Remember, Grand Canyon last year as a 12 seed beat St. Mary's in the opening round. I think everybody knows their story, but Tyon Grant Foster is a guy that a lot of people think has NBA potential. Started his career in the Big 12 at Kansas, averaged 20 a game last year, decided to come back for one more season, averaged 14.5 this year. Jacoby Coles, who began his career at TCU, is averaging about 15 points per game. So they got some dudes, high major dudes in that on that team. Bottom half of the bracket. This is the one with a lot of upset potential, and this is the one everyone's going to be talking about. Missouri versus Drake. Okay, so Missouri out of the SEC. They struggled down the stretch. They did win their SEC tournament opener, ended up losing to Florida in the semifinals. No shame there. I think what's interesting, this is a fascinating clash of styles, okay? What Missouri wants to do is force you into a million turnovers. They want to play fast. They want to make you uncomfortable. Drake plays super slow. And how about this? Drake going into the NCAA tournament is one of the best teams in the country in terms of turnovers. They just take care of the basketball really well. And so I look at that Drake team, and I think that could, in theory, be a tough matchup for Missouri because they're going to make sure that they don't do what Missouri wants them to do, which is turn the ball over. So that is a fascinating matchup to me. Drake is top 50 in the country in turnover margin. In other words, turnovers that they force versus turnovers that they whatever. And I just think that is going to be a very interesting matchup. I think that's going to be a fascinating matchup in that region. Texas Tech over against Wilmington. Listen, Wilmington's a great story. Texas Tech is awesome. They've been dealing with a few injuries. Darian Williams has been in on a lineup. I think Texas Tech rolls there. Now, let's get to the bottom half of this bracket. Arkansas, Kansas. Arkansas, Kansas, baby. So listen, what is there to say? I mean, what is there to say? Arkansas, Kansas, Self versus Calipari. I mentioned it earlier. These two teams played in a charity exhibition. To say that those two teams are a little bit different than when they played. By the way, Boogie Fland played in that game. Apparently, Boogie Fland is coming back for the NCAA tournament. Listen, I'll be real. I think I like Arkansas. Arkansas needs, I haven't listened to Coach Cal's availabilities yet, but I think it's kind of worth noting, I just think that you look at Arkansas, what is the status of all these? Has been said publicly, but he was clearly nothing close to 100%. But I do think more bodies, the better. So Arkansas versus Kansas, I think it'll be interesting. Kansas has been kind of a whipping boy all season long. Kansas has been a team that, in theory, to me, is a team that has the capability to play really well, but not play well. Lost to Arizona, easily could have lost to UCF in the conference championship, in the conference tournament. So I'm very curious about Kansas. Give me 1/2 second here because we're going to talk about the St. John's game in just one moment. Go ahead, give me 1 second here, people. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, people. I love the support. Live chat is humming. We have a lot of thoughts. We have a lot of comments. We have a lot of questions. We're going to get to that in a minute. Hold on. All right, let's keep it going. So let's talk here because so St. John's plays Omaha. I think St. John's is going to be okay against Omaha. We'll get back to the bottom half of the bracket. Florida against either UConn or Oklahoma. I don't think that's the spot where Florida gets upset. First of all, Florida played Oklahoma earlier this year in SEC play. They played way back about 3 weeks ago. Oklahoma lost by 22 points. Florida was up by 22 at the half and basically cruised from there. I've said this about UConn time and time again. Listen, I'm a Husky. Everybody knows it. But I think we also have to be honest about this team. And I just think they're very limited. I think if they even survive Oklahoma, which I'm not sure that they will, I think that I don't think this is you can't bet against UConn because of Hurley and because of no. I think they are very limited in what they do. I think Florida would cruise past that game. Memphis versus Maryland, if we get it, I think will be phenomenal. Again, the story with Memphis is just the status of Tyrese Hunter. He is so important to what they do. Second or third leading scorer, leading assist guy, starting point guard, fifth-year guy. We just got to figure out his status. Bottom half of the bracket, I could see Drake upsetting Missouri. Texas Tech, I think they're just a quiet team. I think you look at Texas Tech, and I think it could be one of those scenarios where you just sit there and say, like, oh, man, like, you just blink and they're in the Sweet 16 and you don't really remember anything from the opening weekend. I'll say this. I do like Arkansas to beat Kansas. I don't know that I can pick Arkansas to beat St. John's, but what I will tell you is this. This is the one matchup that that Rick Pitino didn't want. Now, to be clear, I don't think John Calipari wanted it either, but what I will say, listen, let me even say this. I know we got a lot of St. John's fans that listen to the show. We appreciate your support, okay? This is not a knock on Rick Pitino. I think he's the godfather. I think he's unbelievable. But what I will also say is this. We talked earlier, I'll say, let me backtrack. Pitino. I did the whole segment a few weeks ago, the argument of, could you actually make the argument that he's the GOAT? I bring it up because if you want to make the argument that he's the GOAT, 6 NCAA tournaments with 6 different teams, 5 conference championships with 5 different teams. But there was also about a decade where Calipari owned him, okay? And so I don't know that Arkansas has quite enough, but both these teams are kind of the same. They're not super skilled offensively. They're very physical. I think the length of Arkansas, if Big Z can play with Trevin Brazile, with Big Z, with Jonas Adu, I think it could give St. John's problems. The question is, can Arkansas even get by Kansas? So this is a fascinating draw. I'll tell you this, I don't think it's the worst draw for Arkansas. This is a team that St. John's would not want to have seen. I don't know that I'm ready to pick the upset yet, but I think we could get there. Florida, Texas Tech, I think all these teams can advance. And I just think it's going to be a fun bracket. I know I said I liked Auburn in the other bracket to advance pretty easily. I think Florida, right matchup with Memphis, could lose. I think Florida with the right but I would have trouble not having Florida minimum Sweet 16, maybe beyond. By the way, Florida, I heard, got the kiss of death on the ESPN bracket show. Was told that every analyst on set picked Florida to win the national championship, so that's a little bit concerning. But obviously, they are good to go. All right, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, hit the final 2 regions. We are an hour in. We haven't even hit half of the bracket yet. It's that time of year. We ain't slowing down. Quick break. Be right back. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting. Sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. This is a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at FioBox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly. Not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to FioBox.com. That's FIOBOC. FioBox.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to FioBox. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at FioBox. Thank you to FioBox. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres20 for 20% off. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So, want to give a quick shout out. Drew, who runs both our Torres on SJU account and our Torres on Alabama account, an Alabama student from New York. Drew, I hope I'm not putting you on blast. Just texted me, enough of the nonsense. St. John's rolls past Arkansas. Cal is not a bad matchup. All I'll say, listen, I'm a Zuby Ejiofor guy. I got all of Kansas's fan base furious with me because I said that that Bill Self made a mistake choosing Hunter Dickinson over Zuby Ejiofor. I just bring it up, Drew, because I'm here to tell you, man, a lot of length, a lot of size. I don't know that physically the guards can match up well against each other. Listen, I'll probably pick St. John's when it's all said and done. I'll tell you this. I don't think Pitino wants Cal. I think Cal's a little bit in his head. You can't say that about very many people right now. I think Cal's in his head. I believe the stat is 8-2 in the NCAA overall. Last 2 times in the NCAA tournament, Calipari has gotten the win. Really quickly, we need to before we get to the next bracket. It's what I need to do. I need to thank our friends. I need to thank our partners. I need to thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so bottom line, it's March. You're on the couch. You just spent a week watching college basketball. How about this? You're going to spend all of the next week watching basketball. You're probably going to watch a little on Tuesday, a little on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all day. You need a snack that is both healthy but also delicious as well. My friends, my people, that is where Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com come in. Okay, told you about this company for months now. Family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey is a basketball fan, a football fan. He'll be in the Torres Survivor Pool, which we'll get back to in a minute. But Joey's a sports fan, and he was sitting on the couch one day. He says, I need a snack that is healthy but delicious for me, for my family. That's where Collie Puffs comes in. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But the best part is they taste freaking delicious, okay? For more information, what I need you to do is go to ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, ColliePuffs.com. Also, you can get them on Amazon.com. So go to Amazon.com. You're searching for this. You're searching for that. Go to Amazon. Throw some Collie Puffs in your cart. Try them. You'll like them. Trust me on that. Tell them Torres sent you. Thank you to Collie Puffs. With that said, let's get to 2 more regions. Should mention, by the way, and I keep mentioning it, we are running an Aaron Torres Pod NCAA Tournament Survivor Pool, okay? It's very simple. It's very straightforward. This is all you need to do. Sign up. Click the link, which is pinned to the top of the live chat. Click the link that is pinned to my Twitter page, okay? And you get to compete against me this March. Enter. It's $20 to enter. It's nothing. That's a trip to Starbucks, okay? $20 to enter. And all you got to do is pick one team every single day to win. As they win, you advance. And the only catch is you can't pick the same team twice. So you pick Duke on Friday, they're out for the tournament. You pick Auburn on Thursday, whatever, you can't pick them again. But all you got to do is click the link, sign up. Here's the cool part, by the way. You can have more than one sign up. So you kind of feel like there's 2 or 3 teams that you kind of feel good about coming out of Selection Sunday on that opening night. Take advantage. Again, the Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool, minimum $500 to the winner. But the more of you sign up, the bigger that pool gets. Go ahead and sign up now. Click the link in the bio, in the show description, all that good stuff. All right. Really quickly, what's the next bracket, producer Matt? I am on fumes here. Okay, let's go to the East region. A couple things about the East stand out to me. 1, Duke. We knew they were going to be the number 1 seed. First of all, I'll say this. I mentioned this with Auburn. I know there's some recency bias. I think the committee made the right decision not making Duke the number 1 overall seed. Listen, it's been an incredible season. I'm not here to say Duke might not be the best team in college basketball. But at the same time, their resume is not better than Auburn's. I know they have the head-to-head win. I know Auburn's struggling, but it is a season-long thing. Duke has 9 wins in quad 1. Auburn has basically double that. But Duke does get to go to the East region. That's all they cared about. They're in Newark. They'll obviously play the winner of a play-in game. The 8-9 game is interesting. Mississippi State against Baylor. I'll be real. Both of these teams have been up and down this year. I'm not a Baylor guy. Edgecombe is unbelievable, but they have been up and down all year. Mississippi State, I think, to me, has kind of that athleticism that could give them fits. I think Mississippi State wins that game. Oregon and Liberty is kind of an interesting one. Oregon, by the way, sneaky resume. A ton of quad one wins out of conference, 24 wins overall, 8 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They beat Indiana. They played Michigan State tough just this past week in Indianapolis. They had a tough middle stretch of the season where they lost 6 in a row. They then proceeded to win 2, 4, 6, 7 games straight going into the Big Ten tournament. So they've been playing well. Remember, in November and December, remember what they did. They beat Texas A&M in November. They beat Alabama in November. They beat USC on the road to open Big Ten play. They have a lot of really good wins. They beat Maryland as well. So this is a battle-tested team. I think Liberty, though, is an interesting matchup because Liberty is one of those mid-major teams you want nothing to do with. 28-6 overall. They are a team that shoots the 3 ball exceptionally well, 39% from behind the 3-point arc. The issue is they're not very big, so that will be a game to monitor in that one because it's kind of a battle of styles. Oregon has much more size. Liberty can shoot the crap out of the ball. Arizona-Akron, listen, Arizona, I'll say this, they're going to Seattle. Obviously, the irony there, never forget, the irony there is a football coach at the University of Washington that they do not like. His name is Jedd Fisch. Listen, Arizona fans, be polite, be respectful. No eggs thrown at the house, no posting on social media. But I think they kind of knew that they could end up in Seattle, and that's where they'll be. Tell you what, they're playing a good Akron team. Akron won the MAC at the buzzer. Crazy story in the MAC, by the way. So John Groce, who is the coach of Akron, Travis Steele, the former Xavier coach, is his half-brother. Same mom, different dads. TMI, I know. They faced each other in the MAC championship game, and Akron basically won at the buzzer, okay? But at the same time, Akron is 28-6 overall. They started the season 6-4, so not great at math, but that means they're 22-2 in their last 24 games. I think that's a little bit of a tough draw for Arizona. So I think that's worth noting. Arizona would face Akron in round 1. Not an easy matchup. Arizona's been hot. Arizona's been cold. We've talked a lot about them. BYU versus VCU, bottom half of the bracket. We've talked a lot about BYU, okay? But we know they have to play the Thursday, Saturday regional. And what's interesting about it is that, one, they're playing on Thursday. They play the second game of the day, and they face VCU, who, again, played on Sunday in the final game of their conference championship game. So remember, we talk about it all the time. It's not, if you're in the tournament, it's not always the worst thing to be a team that loses in your conference tournament early. You don't want to lose too early. You don't want to go in on a negative whatever. But BYU loses on Friday. They get home probably late Friday, home all day Saturday, home all day Sunday. They got a short flight to Denver on Tuesday afternoon. VCU is going to get back to campus, probably 8, 9, 10 o'clock on Sunday night, having just played. They got to fly across country, play at altitude, which is another factor as well. By the way, I think everybody knows when I said BYU can't play on Sunday, that is because of the religion. No activities on Sunday. Wisconsin, I'll tell you this, credit Wisconsin, man. They make the run to the Big Ten tournament. They're kind of the reverse Michigan. It felt like they could be probably about a 4, 5, 6 seed. They get the 3 seed. They face Montana, the Big Sky champ. I watched a lot of Montana. They played a couple late night games over the course of the champ week. Good story. Travis DeCure is one of those guys that's been long overdue to get a coaching promotion. I don't know that they're really built to beat a Big Ten team. They lost by 31 to Oregon. They lost by, how about this, 35 to Tennessee earlier in the year. So Montana's a good story. I think that's a nice matchup for Wisconsin. That 7-10 St. Mary's Vandy game is very interesting, though. St. Mary's and Vandy. St. Mary's, super slow pace, all of that. Vandy's an interesting one. We talked a lot about them, right? We thought they were comfortably in the field. They proceed to lose their last 2 games of the regular season, then lose the conference tournament opener. I worried a little bit about if there was any chance that they would get in. they do get in, they are facing St. Mary's. St. Mary's wants to slow you down. They want to beat you up in the paint. St. Mary's, listen, we don't talk about a lot of teams being like really big and really physical in college basketball right now. Mitchell Saxon, 7'1". Polinas Mariskis, this was the kid that was at Arizona. He's about 6'8", 6'9". I actually think that's kind of a tough matchup for Vandy. By the way, if Vandy wins, we would get a third matchup of SEC teams in round 2, potentially. Because remember, we talked about this one earlier. We talked about the fact that in the West Regional, we could have a matchup of who was the first one that we talked about? I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. Anyway, we do know that Kentucky could potentially play Texas in round 2. We'll get to that one in a minute. Alabama, of course, could face Vandy in round 2. That would be an SEC on SEC matchup. The only other real takes that I have, I think Mississippi State could be a tough matchup for Duke because they're just as athletic, they're just as physical, and they don't back down. Now, Mississippi State has obviously been up and down since the start of conference play. They don't shoot the 3 ball well. I think that Mississippi State would be okay, but they're a great rebounding team. Again, super athletic. Keyshawn Murphy, Cameron Matthews. You go on and on down the list. I think they could give Duke a little bit of trouble. Oregon versus Arizona, obviously a former Pac-12 matchup. I think the big thing with Arizona, so hot and so cold, right? I mean, this is a team that won at BYU. This is a team that just beat Kansas in Kansas City, 20 minutes from the Kansas campus. This is a team that beat Texas Tech in the conference tournament. But this is also a team that struggled down the stretch. They lost at Kansas State. I know Kansas State was playing well, but kind of was up and down. So I'll be curious. Arizona's kind of a team. They have not played well in the tournament with Tommy Lloyd. We'll see if they can get right there. I'll tell you what, BYU, I think that this is a nice draw for them. Wisconsin is good. BYU, everything that Wisconsin does well, good guard play, good rebounding. BYU does the same. I could easily see BYU advancing as a 6 seed there. Wisconsin, to its credit, is really good. Tanji is a really good player. They rebound pretty well, but they're not bigger. They're not more athletic than BYU. So I could see BYU making a run there. Duke, I'll be real. I think Duke, if they can get by Mississippi State, I would like them against Arizona. A lot of things Arizona does well. I think Duke just does better. And then the question becomes, can somebody from the bottom half of that bracket beat them? I think the most obvious team is Alabama. Alabama's been up. Alabama's been down. The big story with Alabama, of course, is Grant Nelson. We find out that he hurts his knee. I saw Nate Oates say he only expects him to be out for 4 to 5 days, which would mean that he would be back for the opening rounds, potentially of the tournament, certainly the second round. But Alabama, I actually think it's a very nice draw. They destroyed Vandy earlier in the year. St. Mary's, they would beat St. Mary's by 20-plus points. Didn't they? They were supposed to play St. Mary's in round 2 last year. But I think Alabama's got a nice path to the Sweet 16. Also, if we get a BYU-Alabama game in the Sweet 16 in Newark, that's going to be like 115 to 110 a final score. I think Duke's got a pretty nice path. I think Alabama-BYU would be maybe the game of the tournament in the Sweet 16. For people just joining us, quick reminder, we're not making official, listen, I know everybody wants to make their, this is my Final Four, this is my national championship. It's like, dude, Grant Nelson's hurt, Cooper Flagg's hurt, Tyrese Hunter's hurt, Iowa State's got 2 guys hurt. Like, I'm not making any. By the way, we're going to get to the last regional here. Lamont Butler's hurt. I know Mark Pope said it's a best case scenario, but Kentucky's a different team without Lamont Butler. So let's get to that final regional. Let's talk about it. It is the Midwest. Houston is the number 1 seed. I'm going to get some water. So please stick with me here for half a second. By the way, this is the great part about live streaming. We just go as long as you guys want. The chat is still humming. We still have a ton of people. Let's keep the conversation going. Producer Matt is targeting a few really good questions that we will get to in a minute. Number 1 seed, Houston. Yeah, SIU Edwardsville. I think Houston will be okay. SIU Edwardsville, obviously the first team to clinch an auto bid out of the OVC, so congrats to them. Gonzaga, Georgia is interesting for a couple different reasons. First of all, this is a little inside baseball, but Asa Newell, Georgia's star freshman, chose Georgia over Gonzaga, almost ended up in Gonzaga. 2, what I think is really interesting to me, Gonzaga has a 9-year streak of making at least the Sweet 16. They've made the Sweet 16 every year since 2015. I think it's safe to say it's over. I mentioned this earlier with Louisville and Creighton. I'm not giving out too many picks that I feel really good about right now. I think Georgia rolls Gonzaga. I just think that's a bad matchup for them. And you know me, I'm not a Mike White guy, but I think that's a tough matchup for Gonzaga. Really quick, kind of staying in that region, Clemson versus McNeese. Listen, I haven't listened to anybody else's takes, so I don't want to, I don't know how many other people are saying this. Last year, everybody was on McNeese. I didn't love the draw for them. They played Gonzaga last year, if you remember. This year, I actually really like the draw. Clemson's good. They're physical. They're athletic, but they don't overwhelm you with size. They don't overwhelm you with anything. What Clemson's strength is they're just an older team that doesn't beat themselves. Well, McNeese, if you watch them, they're not very big, but they are super athletic. They got a bunch of dudes that played at the high major level. Starter from Arizona State, starter from Syracuse. Brandon Murray played in the SEC in the Big Ten or the Big East, played at LSU, played at Georgetown, played at Ole Miss. I think McNeese could potentially pull off the upset there. I need to look into it a little bit more. Purdue and High Point. Purdue probably wins. High Point, Allen Huss, great story there. I think that's a tough matchup for them. Now let's get to the bottom half of the bracket because this is where it's really interesting. So Illinois is the 6th seed, okay? Illinois, we know a lot about them, up and down all year. I think at one point we did a mid-season Final Four, and I had Illinois there. They've been a little up. They've been a little down. They've had some injuries. Morez Johnson was in and out of the lineup. Little Z, Big Z's brother, I guess it's not Little Z. It's Big T. Tomislav Ivicic was in and out of the lineup with the flu. They'll face the winner of Xavier versus Texas. Now, why that's interesting? I think there were a lot of bracketologists that did not have either Xavier or Texas in the NCAA tournament coming into this weekend. And so Xavier and Texas both get in. I'll be quick. Texas, I thought, didn't really have much of a resume, but they get those 2 wins in the SEC tournament. That probably put them over the top. I think Xavier, you can make as much of an argument, did not belong in as UNC. I have no problem. Sean Miller's a beast. I wouldn't want to deal with Sean Miller. I think the other interesting story in that game is Texas. I think Rodney Terry's coaching for his job. Remember, he got the interim job 2 years ago when Chris Beard got fired and went to an Elite Eight with Marcus Carr and all those guys. Timmy Allen keeps the job. I think there was a thought, if they don't make the NCAA tournament, Rodney Terry gets fired. Well, now you're playing Xavier. You should have a little bit of a style matchup there. You can beat Illinois. Could Rodney Terry be in a situation where they could potentially make another run and he could at least put Texas in a tough spot for him to keep his job? Now, I'll be real. I think anything short of probably a Final Four, I think he's gone. But, the pathway's certainly there. Kentucky against Troy, I think Kentucky rolls there. This is an interesting one. We just talked about it a minute ago. UCLA, I don't know if any school has logged more miles than UCLA this season. They now have to travel to Lexington to face Utah State. I'll be real. I think Utah State pulls off the upset here. For people who haven't watched Utah State, pretty big, sort of athletic. I would normally, under different circumstances, pick UCLA, but I'm just telling you, there's some weird vibes going on there. Mick Cronin, I think it's pretty public, is trying to get another job. He talked about the Indiana job. And Utah State is one of those teams, 26-7. I know they struggled down the stretch, lost 2 of their final 3 regular season games, but they get in, they lose in the semifinals to Colorado State. But Ian Martinez is a former high major guy. That's their leading scorer. They shoot the 3-ball well, 37%. UCLA is the better team. But how mad is Mick Cronin going to be about flying west to east again? I could see them getting the upset, getting upset there, and then Tennessee at the bottom of the bracket. Going back up, second, third round, listen, I don't think Houston should roll past either Georgia or Gonzaga. I do like Georgia there. I'll tell you, McNeese was a trendy pick last year to make like a Sweet 16. If they can get by Clemson, I think McNeese can beat Purdue. By the way, those Purdue fans would be just a treat if Will Wade knocked them out of the NCAA tournament. I got to look a little bit more into High Point. By the way, I got a ton of people hitting me up. I got random people hitting me up. Purdue, I think, rolls past High Point in that one. Illinois facing the winner of Xavier and Texas. There's just been something that's not quite right about Illinois. Texas, I think they know they're playing for Rodney Terry's job. I could see the scenario where the 11 seed pulls off the upset. We talked about, I believe, North Carolina could potentially pull off the upset as an 11 seed when they face off, if they face off with Ole Miss. I could see Texas pulling off the upset here. Say what you want about Texas. But Texas is a team. They beat Kentucky. They just beat Texas A&M. They just beat Vandy. I know they didn't have a great out-of-conference resume, but it's not like they haven't beaten people. Beat Texas A&M twice, as a matter of fact. Beat Missouri. Beat Oklahoma. They beat a lot of tournament teams. So I could see Texas pulling off the upset here if they were to advance. Staying in that bracket, again, Texas would face Kentucky. I think Texas could beat Illinois. I don't think they could beat Kentucky. I think Kentucky, Kentucky could have trouble with Illinois. I don't know that they would have trouble with Texas. And then the bottom half of the bracket, I think Tennessee rolls to a potential Sweet 16. I'll say this: Kentucky versus Tennessee in a Sweet 16 in Indianapolis. That would be fascinating. We know that Tennessee lost twice to Kentucky throughout the regular season. I think Tennessee's playing their best basketball. And then you got Houston. I'll be real. I could lie. I could sugarcoat. I could pretend that Houston gets upset somewhere. You know that Houston has lost a grand total of one game since the end of November. They went 19-1 in the Big 12. Only loss was to Texas Tech. And I think just look at what they did the last two games in the Big 12 tournament. BYU was on a 9-game winning streak. Houston beat them by 20. Arizona was playing great basketball. Houston wins 72-64. I think they are totally underrated. I think we could very likely get a Houston versus Tennessee matchup in the Elite Eight. If we do, it's going to set a record for bloody noses and black eyes and elbows and fists. My buddy JJ Redick, for the OG listeners of this show, he is not going to be happy with the offensive quality in that game. By the way, I think we could get Houston, Kentucky as well, because Kentucky already is 2-0 against Tennessee. Producer Matt, we are at close to an hour and a half of live content. The chat is still humming. Let's get to a couple questions. I know you have a couple flags, so let's go ahead and get to them. So Derby, talking about North Carolina being in, said, quote, "Committee is blinded by brands. It's a total clown show. It's an abomination." So first of all, let me say this. You can't say they're totally blinded by brands, because if they were, Indiana would be in as well. I think you could actually argue Indiana kind of has a stronger case about not being in the tournament than West Virginia. West Virginia had some bad losses in league play, 3 quad 2 losses. Indiana didn't lose a single game outside of quad 1. So I'm not excusing or justifying. I think that actually, I don't think it's brand bias necessarily. What I will tell you, I think the net has to go. And I told you earlier, we had Rocco Miller, who's a bracketologist for the Field of 68. And we were talking about the mid-majors versus the high majors. And so I'll give you an example. UC Irvine was the runner-up in the Big West. They lost to UC San Diego, okay? Why do I bring it up? UC Irvine, with that loss, finished the season. By the way, they lost to the only team in the league better than them. They went 28-6, and they weren't even close to the bubble. And so what I believe is the issue is the fact that we need to do a better job with the net. If that team is 28-6 and North Carolina is getting in at 22-13, I understand North Carolina's schedule is tougher, but why are we rewarding mediocrity? And it's funny too, because Rocco mentioned this. We used to remember, before we had the net, we had the RPI, okay? And Rocco said if we still had the RPI, UC Irvine would have been like a 9 seed. They would have easily been in. It wouldn't have even been a question. And I think we have to go back to considering, I don't think that we should be rewarding mediocrity in the manner that we are. Hold on one second. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, geez. All right. Never ends. Always got something popping up. So Rocco said that Irvine would have been in. And so you look at a school like North Carolina, I just think you look at the idea of like, how about putting in teams that were 28, 29, 27 wins rather than a North Carolina, but it's not just North Carolina. It's Xavier too. 1 quad 1 win. It's Texas, 15 overall losses. Like, what are we even doing here? Let's keep it going. Indiana was robbed. No, listen, the bubble was terrible, but when every bracketologist has Indiana in, Indiana got screwed. And listen, there's no tears for Mike Woodson. He's getting paid $8 million to go away. But 4-3, they had 4 quad 1 wins. That's way more than Xavier. That's way more than North Carolina. By the way, San Diego State, I think, had 3 Q1 wins. And by the way, San Diego State had a great win over Houston. But guess what? Indiana had a great win over Michigan State as well. And so I'm being serious when I say this. I think you can legitimately argue. We're talking about West Virginia. I think Indiana got way more screwed because West Virginia had 3 Q2 losses. Indiana had 0. And so I just look at Indiana. I do feel bad. Woodson really got that team playing well. I think part of the fan base is probably just fired up to move on to the coaching search. But I just don't. I think it's hard to make a legitimate argument that if we're picking 68 teams that they shouldn't have been in. By the way, I mentioned this earlier in the show. Bad day for people that have been fighting for NCAA tournament expansion. Well, we're talking about North Carolina getting in, Xavier getting in, Texas with 15 losses. I think it's probably time to curb expansion for now because you let these other teams in. Ohio State with 15, 16 losses, and there's a lot of bad teams that are making this field of what is now 68. Who is the deep run dark horse in this year's bracket? I think we'll do a Tuesday show where I kind of hit on some of these. Who's like the surprise team that could pull off multiple upsets. I mentioned it a minute ago. I think McNeese's draw is actually pretty nice. Clemson's kind of a veteran team, but they don't overwhelm you. The thing with McNeese that they just don't have enough of is size. Like McNeese is not a big team. Will Wade said on the show, he's like, dude, we don't have a 7-footer because we play against a bunch of 6'9" centers in our league. So what am I going to recruit a 7-footer for? He's not going to have no value on this team. But Clemson isn't super big. And I think McNeese is a tough team, and I think that's not a bad matchup for them. And then with Purdue, like we know Purdue, listen, Trey Kaufman-Renn was phenomenal this year. Braden Smith was phenomenal. But they're not unbeatable. I mean, this is a team that lost 4 straight games in February. This was a team that got run out of the gym by Michigan in the conference tournament. So I think McNeese actually has a pretty nice draw. I'm looking really quickly. I'm telling you, everybody's mad at me for saying it. I think if Arkansas gets by Kansas, Pitino wants nothing to do with them. Arkansas is a potential 10 seed. I would say in that region as well. Drake, we talked about them a minute ago. Missouri wants to run you off the court. Missouri wants to force a lot of turnovers, get out in fast break, and take advantage. Drake takes care of the basketball. Drake does not beat themselves. I actually think that's a bad matchup for Missouri. And then the other one, and I think we might have mentioned it earlier. I think I see it in the chat, actually. But New Mexico is a 10 seed. Listen, New Mexico's got real players. Donovan Dent could play anywhere in college basketball. One of their best players, Philippe Babracharin, I forget how you say his name. My buddy Mike Luke from Arizona loves him. He played at Arizona. CJ Noland, one of their top guards, played at Oklahoma. Nelly Jr. Joseph, their best big man, played for Rick Pitino at Iona. And so, they got dudes that can beat you. And I think they would actually give Michigan State fits. Listen, Michigan State's good, but they don't shoot the 3 ball well. And I think, just expecting to just out athletic everybody is a tough tough everybody is a tough ask in the NCAA tournament. The thing with New Mexico, and I said it a minute ago, never made a Sweet 16 in school history, which sounds crazy, but they've literally never made a Sweet 16. So if you've never made a Sweet 16, you sit there and say, okay, is history going to be made this year? I just don't know. I'm trying to look at the rest of the bracket. Like I said with Arizona, that Akron game scares me because Akron's playing with nothing to lose. Veteran team. Arizona is a team that has struggled in the NCAA tournament in recent years. Akron, 28 wins. What did I say? 22-2 in their last 24. They were in the tournament last year. So, I mean, they just, they check a lot of boxes. Good all season long, played in the NCAA tournament. I know this is a portal world where a lot of guys don't stay year over year, but, their best player, Nate Johnson, has been in the program, was part of that NCAA tournament run last year. So I think Arizona, that could be a surprise as well. Great crowd here on a Sunday night, excuse me. We are late into the evening, but the crowd is still going, so we're going to keep going. I would love to make myself a little drink right now, but, a couple more questions, we'll get out of here. Hot take, no number one seed will be in the Final Four, says Sam Bostic. Sam, if no number one seed makes the Final Four, I can't say it, but I was going to say I'd fly you out to San Antonio and you could hang with producer Matt and I for a week, but one, I can't afford it. San Antonio is a very expensive city. And then two, listen, you look, Duke doesn't have its best player right now. Auburn's struggling. I guess I could see it, but I would be surprised. I say this every year. There's this idea that there's so many teams that can win the national championship. In general, it's really about a group of it really ended up being a group of about 4 to 5 teams every year that can win it. And it's always the number one seeds. Now, I will say, Florida went from like, oh man, they might be a team that we should be paying attention to a team that literally everybody is picking. So, it wouldn't stun me if they got tripped up somewhere along the way. Todd Golden, I could be wrong. I mean, listen, he's a baby. He's like 36 years old, but I don't think he has a tournament win yet. I mean, he was at San Francisco. I believe they lost to Murray State. And then last year they lost in their opener. I'm telling you, I don't think UConn's going to be the team to beat them. They've already beaten Oklahoma. Maryland could be a surprise team that could trip them up because Maryland has really good guard play as well. I just don't see the team that beats them. I just really don't. So, yeah, Sam, what was it? Was it Sam Bostic? I apologize. Sam, if no number one seed makes it, then like I said, we'll get you some Collie Puffs or something because that would be incredible. By the way, a couple more questions. I need a jumbo bag of Collie Puffs, says UK Till I Die. You do. You need several jumbo bags of Collie Puffs because you're going to be on the couch all weekend. More information, Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Should mention, by the way, if you do want to go to a game, you see that SeatGeek logo at the top of your screen. We got a special offer. All you got to do, go on SeatGeek, order your tickets. The green dot is what you're looking for. You see that green dot, guess what happens? They're telling you which seats you want to buy. The best part is this. With your first purchase, use promo code Torres, Torres at checkout. You get $20 off. So if you're a Kentucky fan like UK Till I Die who wants to go to a game, she's going to get Collie Puffs instead, and we appreciate your support. But if you're going to a game, say you're a UK fan going to Milwaukee, say you're an Arkansas fan or a Kansas fan going to Providence, say you're a St. John's fan going to Providence, BYU fan going to Denver, Michigan fan going to Denver. I'm just going to name all 68 teams and where they're going. No, I'm kidding. All you got to do, use promo code Torres at checkout. You get $20 off. We're rocking and rolling with SeatGeek, so we appreciate their support. A couple other ones before we get out of here. I am fucking wiped. Whoa. FCC is going to be all over me on that. Sorry to the live audience there. I apologize. Matty Ice says, I just want to know how Boise State beats San Diego State, New Mexico, Utah State, Clemson, and St. Mary's, and they're sitting at home. Listen, I told you, the net's a joke. I mean, the net, listen, I don't know if anybody's going to fight this because the net so favors these power conference teams, but I always say it, the power conference teams have all the advantages anyway. Listen, I give Texas credit because they won those 2 games in the SEC tournament. They won I think they won a big game late in the year. They win at Mississippi State. But at a certain point, they have 15 losses. They have no great out-of-conference wins. And the thing I keep going back to, Texas fans don't want to watch this team. Texas fans would rather Ronnie Terry be out and they start working on their coaching search. And then 2, they'd actually rather watch spring football, but that's another conversation. But then 2, everything's just so skewed for these power conference teams. So Boise State's they should be in. I don't know if they've accepted or declined an NIT invite. We got the Crown event going on right now. But like, if I'm a Boise fan, I'm furious because this team played well. Listen, Matty Ice brings up the great point. All those NCAA tournament teams in their league, San Diego State, New Mexico, Utah State, they beat them throughout the season. Plus Clemson, plus St. Mary's. I think Boise has a gripe. Listen, if Torres was a one-man tournament committee, Indiana, Boise, I would put in UC Irvine, even though I know there was really nothing that really kind of said they should be in. North Carolina, 1Q1 loss, out. Who else? Xavier, love Sean Miller, 1Q1 loss, 1Q1 win, out. And oh, by the way, Texas, 15 losses. I'm sorry, dude. Would they go 19-15? How about you go 21-13? We're not even having this debate. So that would be, I'd take Boise, Indiana, and Irvine. I'd put out those three teams I mentioned. The other thing too, here's the other thing. These fans don't want to watch them. But the other thing is, what makes March great is the Cinderella run. And so the fact that the Cinderella, nobody's going to remember, like if Texas makes a miracle run in the Sweet, nobody's going to be like, remember that magical year Texas made the Sweet 16 as an 11 seed? It's like, yeah, they had more NIL money than everybody. Of course they should have made it. But Boise State makes the Sweet 16. That's special. It's disappointing. One or two more, we'll get out of here. I'm freaking wiped. Funny how 3 Hall of Fame coaches in the same bracket says Angel. That would be John Calipari and Bill Self facing off in round 1. The winner very likely getting Rick Pitino in round 2. It's a made-for-TV event. We could lie, we can pretend, we can deny. It is. It's just a made-for-TV event. Remember, by the way, it's already been announced that the Arkansas-Kansas game will be the 7 Eastern tip-off on CBS. So CBS gets Self versus Calipari. Wink, wink, total coincidence there. And then I would assume, CBS has those 3 games on Saturday. They'll have like a noon tip-off, a 2:30, and then a game going into 60 minutes. My guess is that whoever, maybe it's Duke, Baylor. If we get Baylor, I think it's probably going to be either Calipari or Self versus Rick Pitino. One more, and I think we're going to get out of here. I'm going to Rupp. If it's Louisville, Auburn, I'll be a Cards fan for a day. PN2B Posse says that. Well, PN2B Posse, remember, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres, 20% off. By the way, are we going to get some people to sign up for our Aaron Torres Pod Survivor Pool? Last time I referenced it, but we are giving away thousands in cash prizes. Listen, a minimum of $500 will go to you, up to $10,000 depending on how many people sign up. But you got to go ahead and sign up. The link is pinned atop the live chat here. We've all done Survivor pools. It's awesome. It's simple. You pick one game every day. If that team wins, if that team advances, guess what happens? You pick another team the next day. Multiple entries. So if you're not feeling great about that first day, sign up again. It's $20 up to $500 or minimum $500 in prizes, up to $10,000. Make sure to sign up. Listen, I could go on all night. We got a monster live chat right now, but I think it is officially time for me to go ahead and get out of here. Do me a quick favor. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please make sure to do so. We are rocking and rolling. We have hit well over 51,000 subscribers. Can we get to 52,000 before Thursday? I think we can, so make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, on YouTube, on Twitter, Amazon, Google, all that. That will not be on Twitter. That will be wherever you download podcasts. And let's rock. I think we're going to be back Tuesday night. We'll get to some of your tournament questions. By the way, the portal isn't even officially open yet. We already got some big names that have announced they are leaving, so we'll talk about that. Some coaching carousel stuff. Probably be back on Monday night. Tuesday night, I think we make our official tourney picks, and then from there, as the kids say, let's ball. Time for me to go. Hour 38 minutes of content after I hosted 3 hours of radio. Least you can do. Sign up for the bracket challenge. Again, if you're going to NCAA tournament games, use promo code Torres at checkout. Also, should mention thank you to BetUS TV for their support. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. I will be back Tuesday night. We'll do this all again. New episode, Aaron Torres Pod.